Hey guys, welcome back. Today, I thought it'd be fun to show you guys how I make my scrunchies using hair ties as opposed to, craft elastic. And by elastic, I just mean this stuff right here. It's okay if you use craft elastic, do you, but personally, I prefer to use hair ties. And there are a couple reasons why. One being durability. These hair ties are made for hair. So they're made for everyday use, meaning they're not gonna stretch out as easily as craft elastic would. And two, consistency. Typically when you're purchasing a pack of hair ties, they are all the same size. So if you plan on making, 24 scrunchies and you buy a pack of 24 hair ties, they are all gonna be the same size. They're pre-measured for you. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Very quickly, let me just show you kind of what my scrunchies look like. So these scrunchies are actually left over from when I still had my Etsy. They have just been sitting in this bag in my closet along with all the other stuff I never sold. And these are my large scrunchies. So I used to sell 2 different sizes. Today I'm gonna be demoing on a larger scrunchie just so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit better. So this is kind of what they look like. This scrunchie right here is actually an old one from my Halloween collection. All of the scrunchies I made were used from repurposing thrifted materials. So in this case, this was made from a tablecloth. As you can see, I used to include little labels. They say Spool Spell on them. That's what they look like wrapped. So anyways, we're gonna be making that size today. This one's just made with 2 tablecloths. So I had 2 different plaids going on. Love it, it's very funky. But I won't bore you guys to death with my products. So let's just jump into it. So yeah, anyways, for today's demo, I went ahead and pre-cut my fabric. This, like I mentioned before, is made for a large scrunchie. So the piece measures 7 inches by 32 inches. But essentially that doesn't really matter because the same concept will apply to whether you're making a large scrunchie or a regular size scrunchie. And then here's my hair tie. These are large hair ties, so they are a little bit different than your standard size hair tie. But let me show you what they look like real quick. If you're interested in making your own large scrunchie, this is the brand that I use. Like I already mentioned, it doesn't have to be a large hair tie. This concept will apply to any size hair tie. So essentially all I'm gonna do here is take my hair tie, take my fabric. I am going to take one corner of my fabric and put it inside of my hair tie. Then I'm going to fold both corners together so that my fabric is right sides together. And you can use pins if you would like to do this, but I'm kind of lazy, so I kind of just hold it and sew as I'm going. Once your corners are right side together, you're just gonna sew like you normally would, making sure to backstitch. And then you start sewing. Oh, shoot, my machine isn't even threaded, so give me a second. Okay, let's try this again. So once again, I am taking my fabric and right side is facing me. I am taking one of my corners, putting it through that hair tie and folding over the other corner, making sure that my fabric are right sides together. Is right sides together? Yeah, my fabric is right sides together. So I'm just gonna keep folding and sewing as I go. Folding and sewing. Okay, so as you approach the bottom, you're gonna wanna make sure you leave a gap that is about 1.5 to 2 inches wide. This is gonna make it so that we can flip our scrunchie out towards the end, and this will make a lot more sense once you see it. So I am just gonna backstitch. And chop, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I am gonna leave about 1.5 to 2 inches and continue sewing. So basically there should be a hole there. And I'm just gonna start sewing again. And I'm just gonna sew all the way down. Okay, so this is basically what your project should look like if you're following along. As you can see, it almost looks like a scrunchie, but it's flipped inside out and it is not connected right here at the ends. There is my hole. So this is the fun part. I think there's a term for this. I think that it might be called the magic tube, but I'm not sure, so don't take my word for it. But essentially this is what we're gonna do. We are going to take our scrunchie and flip it all the way inside out so that it's right side out. Flipping. Okay, so this is what it's looking like now. It's definitely looking more like a scrunchie, but now we need to close the scrunchie. So basically you're gonna take the side that has the hole and flip it over, but we're not flipping it all the way. We're just going to flip it so that this raw edge meets this raw edge. So I'm flipping it basically in half. It's very important that you flip the side that has the hole because you need to be able to access that in order to be able to finish the scrunchie. I have flipped it all the way over, so basically it looks like that. And now I'm going to take both of these raw edges, and this is where you can pin them together. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you match up your seams. I'm using clips. This part can be a little bit finicky. You just kind of have to work with the fabric. Okay, so this is basically what it looks like. I flipped my fabric over halfway. There's my hole. And then essentially that's the center of the scrunchie. So the next step would be to sew this together. This would also be a great place to put a label in if you plan on putting labels into your scrunchie. That's how I used to make mine. So the next step is just to sew this. So this is just a little side tangent, but essentially one time I saw somebody on Threads talking about how they were trying to hem their sleeve, but they weren't sure how they were going to do it because the sleeve wasn't going to fit around the arm of their sewing machine. And I ended up telling them, like, that's okay, you don't have to do that because essentially you can just fit your sleeve around your presser foot instead of your arm, if that makes sense. So let me show you how I'm gonna do that with this scrunchie. I like to start at the seam to make sure that my seams are lined up, and I'm just gonna wrap it around that presser foot. And you wanna make sure that your clips and the fabric don't get in the way. But once again, I'm using the edge of my presser foot as my seam allowance. So yeah, just sew like you normally would, making sure to backstitch. And go slow on this part because the slower you go, the straighter your seams will be. So I'm kind of just pulling my hair tie out of the way as well as my fabric, just to make sure that nothing gets in the way. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Are you guys ready? So the next step is to take that hole, wherever you're at, you're gonna take that hole and you're going to flip the scrunchie through it. So I'm pulling that scrunchie out from that hole, and you'll just do this slowly to make sure that you don't rip anything. And there it goes. There's the magic. There's my scrunchie on a hair tie, and there's my seam. That's basically how you sew onto a circle. So the next step is to close our scrunchie, and you can either do this by hand or you can just stitch it on your machine, which is usually what I do. I am just going to top stitch close to that edge, and then our scrunchie will be done. And voila! There it is. There is a scrunchie sewn directly onto a hair tie. Let me go get my stick real quick. So this is how I used to display my scrunchies when I would take photos for my listings. This is just an acrylic rod. But yeah, let's wrap it on there. My hair is a little bit too short for scrunchies right now, which is why I'm making this for my daughter. But I want you guys to kind of get the visual, so I'm gonna wrap it on my rod. There it is. I think you guys kind of get the general idea of what it'll look like in somebody's hair. But yeah, guys, that is basically how you make a scrunchie using a hair tie. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye.